What is up, podheads? Back with another episode of the Podio Slay podcast. I'm joined, as always, by Anthony.
Hey, yeah, what's up, man? Didn't see you there.
Oh, hey, what's up? What's going on? And Nate joins us for the interview, the conversation with Kevin. We're recording this at a time that the two of us can get it together because time is tough nowadays, right? It's busy. It's a busy world. So we're cranking out an intro, but we had a great conversation with Kevin Lyman surrounding the Warped Tour and the summer they have planned into the fall. And yeah, man, it's another 3-time guest, somebody that's been with us 3 times now, and it's like we pick up right where we left off.
Yeah, again, like a lot of the people that we've had on, we'll have a conversation with them, and sometimes that's the end of it. Other times it's you have them on again, and I can't, for anyone that does interviews, like what I'm talking about, but I can't like emphasize that enough. When you chat with someone again and you have that. Some rapport with them, it just makes for a better conversation. I think this is the best conversation we've had with him. First time was when we did the Tattoo of the Earth retrospective. Second time was when he had the summer school tour. That was a couple of years ago. And then this one was full blown, just Kevin for an hour, right?
Yeah. Yep. And the 3 of us got into all kinds of different stuff surrounding Warped Tour, it coming back, how they pick where they're at now, because it's a couple of 2-day events spread across 5 months. DC, Long Beach, Montreal this year, Mexico City this year, and then Orlando again. So a little bit of an expansion from last year. Lots of great bands on the bills. You can see most of it has been announced at this point. There might be a couple stragglers, but go check the websites in the show notes. If you're close by one of these, the price is right. There's a million bands that you're going to want to see. A bunch of Podio Slave alums on the bills. Go check them out because it's as good a bang for your buck festival-wise as you're going to get. There really isn't anything better.
And now that you're saying that, we do hit on that. We do hit on the price point, and we hit on actually a lot of the economics of the tour. So if you're into the kind of the business side of things, there's nothing out of school, but he just talks, the touring landscape, festival landscape, how they're sourcing bands, just relationships over the years. This is a great pass. I think we talk even some of the origin stuff of the tour from back in the day, getting bands on board. And man, I personally have not been to a Warped Tour in 20 years. Should we go?
We should definitely go. The DC one's the closest. I did hint at him coming back to Boston at some point, but that the logistics of that are not there at the moment. Maybe next year they get an ad, a field in Maine, Kevin, if you're listening. Let's go.
But yeah, you said it. Washington, D.C. in June, Long Beach, California in July, Montreal, Canada in August, Mexico City, Mexico in September, and Orlando, Florida in November. Geez, maybe that's the one. Get out of the Northeast cold, right?
November, right as it starts to turn and get nasty here. Yeah. We're coming out of it now, though. We're getting into the good weather. We're in the middle of fake spring. I love fake spring. It's 70-degree days in, late March. It doesn't happen often, but we'll take it.
That's my new Midwest emo band, Fake Spring.
Fake Spring's a great band name. we should copyright
band name, real or fake?
Taken. It probably already is taken. Yeah. But yeah, here's our conversation with Kevin Lyman, Warped Tour, and Anthony, Nate, and I get after it right now.
Let's go. All right, we are back with Kevin Lyman for the 3rd time on the podcast. Do you remember all 3 times, Kevin?
I do. You guys are looking younger and thinner on Zoom.
Thanks.
I did shave today. Yeah.
You guys. It's definitely that time of year. I guess it's nice to have you back, and nice to feel like I might have something to say a 3rd time. We'll see if I can. But if any stories I made up last time, I'll have to remember so I keep it correct this time.
Yeah. Don't go fact checking. Yeah.
Oh no, that's what happens. It's like I'm being a professor in school, and I'm telling them things, and I can see them in the back checking me all day through class.
Oh yeah, that happens.
Yep.
Well, we're happy to have you back. Warped Tour is back again. How many times has Warped Tour returned? I guess that is the question.
Well, we just returned really the one time. Last year we just returned. We never went away. We were 25 years, straight, and then we took this hiatus, which I think probably, in many ways was fantastic. I mean, it reset myself. I was burning out, to be honest. I was at the end of just many, many years. And I think some people were, it was just starting to be like, oh, Warp's coming back. We got maybe taken for granted a little bit to me, that it was just coming back. So taking it away, I think, it's like anything. Sometimes if you take it away, people kind of go, wait, there was a spot for this. That was important. We filled that a bit with summer school. We tried that. We've got that now going in its third year. But the time was right when I got a call and said, "Hey," it just hit me on the right day, I guess, because I turned a lot of people down. And I think that inspiration came a lot from my students, talking to them post-pandemic, how this idea of community, we hear it all the time used in business. We need community. Communities aren't created. They're formed over time and nurtured. And I go,
So
well,
true.
there's still the kind of spark of that Warp Tour just 5 years ago, but there's this whole new generation that if they could be exposed to this music, the culture, the nonprofits, I think they were looking, there was a segment of the population looking for this climate again. And I thought, well, maybe I can, when I was approached by Insomniac, kind of rekindle that a little bit. And I feel like overall it was mission accomplished last year.
Yeah. Yeah. And we grew up going to Warped Tour. We remember back in the day, I'm trying to think, I went to 2000, 2004, and I think 2006. I had a friend that went to 99. I really wish I went to that one.
You went to 02, Nate. We went together.
Oh, in 2002, exactly.
Oh, yeah.
Nate was in the trunk. He didn't remember. You drove him.
And Kevin, I'm pandering here. I'm wearing a Warped Tour 2001 shirt right now.
I see that.
Oh, okay.
And it was a
Still
large.
fits him- still fits him.
It still is a large. And now I'm a large. I grew into it.
That's nice. Yeah, back then it was hanging down to your knees with your baggy skate shorts. So
Yep. Jenkos in the vans and whatnot.
the Jankos. Yeah.
So the business model's changed a little bit, right? Because it used to be a multi-city nationwide run. Now you're doing 5 2-day shows in a few markets, right? You got DC, Long Beach, Orlando, Montreal, Canada, Mexico City. What was the shift to go like just a solid 2-day multi-market?
The world, it's kind of changed in the sense that when we traveled around the country, that was a lot of things we brought with us: stages, trucks, buses, a lot of infrastructure that we traveled with, and it only left X amount of dollars for guarantees for bands. And we paid what we could, but times have changed where bands depend on touring the finances so much more. Early models of Warped Tour was you would come on Warped Tour, build up your fan base, launch a record, have it people pay attention to your record, sell some albums, sell merchandise, and then come back and you'd be worth twice as many tickets, record selling. But the economy had changed so much that the artist, post-pandemic, it was like, oh man, there's the only way to make money is on the road. So that fell into the model. You have a bigger talent budget and you use the infrastructure. You don't have to haul it around and all the stuff that came with it. The second one was I'm too old to go on a 2-month tour.
Yeah.
I'm physically, had multiple surgeries post-pandemic run. I'd have friends that were my age come out for 2 days and feel like, oh my God, you can't do this. And I would insist on being at every show. I kind of got used to hanging out with my wife and getting in our Sprinter van and traveling around the country a little bit and enjoying those summers that, I worked every summer, not only Warped Tour, but Lollapalooza and everything. For about 30 years in a row, I didn't have a summer.
Damn.
So It was like, oh, wow, this is what people do. They sit by a lake for more than 2 hours when the bus stops, and you kind of hang out for a week, or you just kind of wander the country in the van. And we did that. And, thank goodness we ended, because the pandemic would have bankrupted us, to be 100% honest, and our family. Timing was good with that for us, and not for the world of having a pandemic, but, it let me reset, and I got that job teaching, that was nice, being a professor, having that transition from something that becomes so much in your life. That's hard when you give something up like that. Your identity, I always say, as you get older in life, you get known for less and less. Even though I produced probably 30 or 40 other tours and festivals, I was known as the Warped guy, for good or bad. And some people, when they give up that big identity, it could be a shock to your system. But I had a nice transition into teaching, so it was not even it wasn't even a hiccup. It was like, okay, this is my new gig. I'm going to go give it my all. And then I was going, maybe, and then had the opportunity, and here we are. The first year was an anomaly, selling out all the tickets without announcing bands. That was like,
that was last year, you're saying?
Yeah,
insane.
That was insane.
I mean, a lot of the nostalgia, right?
Nostalgia, but I didn't want to bring this back as a nostalgia play. I wanted to pay homage to the past. Of course, you will always see that Warped Tour. I mean, even now, I think announced Bigwig today, People are like shocked. That's rad, Bigwig, for a lot of people. And a lot of kids are going, who? But so you're going to pay homage to that. But then I started to see where, especially when I was talking to my students, and then we started that summer school tour, and I went out on the road for a week with that and rode in a bandwagon. That was brutal, being my age in a bandwagon. But I started looking at the fans and looking at them and watching them singing the same way for those bands they sang at Warp. They'd be out front exchanging, saying how, like the community. I saw this, like this community was still there. It was around. And I go, well, this is kind of cool that I seen if I can capture new people coming, then it's worth doing. And I was really happy at the end where we pretty much, about 30% of the people that came to Warped had never been to a festival, and even many of them to a concert.
Wow. That's wild.
And I know that 10 to 15% of the people that came last year probably enjoyed it, but they kind of came back to a festival, and now their feet hurt way too bad after this Warped Tour incarnation, as big as it was. But our whole goal is to get younger people into going to festivals. That ticket price had to be a very affordable way. There's a lot of fantastic festivals, but when the average festival's, $500 for 3 days or that's out of the realm of exploration. That's a commitment. Or $150, it's still a commitment, absolutely. But what can you do for $75 a day nowadays?
Well, you get to see all those bands too for that over 2 days. And if you're going for a 2-day set, say in Long Beach, you make a weekend out of it. You stay there, and you that's your vacation, right? I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, not to make light of it, but when Warped Tour was a recession entertainment value.
100%. Nate, you've said that verbatim.
Something like that.
Yeah. Back in the day when the economy got tough, which is usually gas prices go up, things were going up, parents would come to me and say, Warped was a great value. Back then it was like $30 or so. They go, if my children wanted to go see a movie, I'd have to give them $30 for popcorn and a movie or whatever, and close to it. And they'd come home and they'd be bored in an hour, wondering what I'm gonna give money to do next. Warped Tour, I send them out. They get really tired. They're sunburned, and then they just want to lay on the couch for 2 or 3 days. That is a value proposition. So maybe right now things are a little tougher. I don't want our gas prices going up. It's horrible what's going on out there. But I was driving home and gas prices were up like 40 cents in 2 days. I go, Warp's could be that value proposition again.
I think it is. And you mentioned new fans. Tony, Nate, and I are of the age where we could have kids that are old enough to go. So you're getting like our generation now probably bringing their kids.
There was a lot of families at Warp.
Yeah.
There was actually like grandparents, kids, and little kids. It was a tight window, but there was a lot of families at Warp. We had that back in the day. There'd be like families that would follow Warp Tour for family vacation. Their family rallied around Warp, and they would come to 3 shows, and the whole family could get in back then for probably, I don't know, $40 a person, so $160 for the day. I mean, that was like just a little more than 1 day at Disneyland, and the whole family got in. They'd follow, stayed at the hotel, and come to the show, and they'd go to 3 or 4 shows and road trip with the Warp Tour. And I remember those people because you met the families, and then they became kind of that extended Warp family you look forward to seeing each year.
So how do you go about sourcing bands in 2026? I know you've got bands that have played it before. You've got some that are playing multiple different venues, but you got to get more, and you got to. Is it a touring routing thing for some of these bands? How's that work?
A lot of it's trickier to book because you're booking over multiple months. We're booking from June to November these bands. So I always try to explain to the fans that look, it Warped when we were touring was easy. Trust me, agents were so happy to here's Kevin, take my band for 2 months. It was like, go, they're yours. We know you'll take care of them. Now we're falling into different cycles. You got bands going to Europe. You got bands going to Asia. You got bands now going to India. You've got touring going on. So it's much trickier to book now. Amanda, who's my main booker, Amanda Phelan, had done other festivals and things, but she's kind of come over and she's kind of taken the same mindset of ours. It's tricky to book Warp because our economic model is different. When our ticket price is what it is, those stages, those fences, the security, it all costs the same as a festival that charges $500. You don't get breaks because I'm saying I'm giving it cheap to the toilet company. You're like, yeah, bro, no problem. It's still going to cost you $200 a day for that toilet. I don't care. Charge whatever you want. So our economic model really, limits in a positive way certain bands we can't book because we're trying to book 150 bands. And people go, well, you should. I go, well, you got to think about those bands. They've worked really hard, so their economic model doesn't match up to my economic model. That's as simple as it is. It goes all the way back, and you guys probably know Fugazi. Ian Mackay and me were pretty good friends. Ian is a good friend, but his economic model was a $6 ticket in 1995, and mine was a $15 ticket. That was my economic model of $15. I wish I could have done a show for $6, and Ian couldn't be on a show for $15. We had mutual respect from our communities and what we were trying to do and each other. I'd run into him and we'd chat and kind of laugh, go, oh yeah, the kids are saying you should be on here, but I don't know if there'd be any gas for the buses or food for the band, just the economics. And that's kind of where we're at with certain bands. Now, the door, and I always say that model may change at some point, or maybe it makes sense to come play a Warped Tour. It's great. I'm so happy some of my bands we can't afford to book. I remember when I was booking it for $250 on the small stage.
I mean, it's amazing that the bills that you still have that we're looking at for this festival, because they're bands that broke on Warped Tour in general, like call it Newfound Glories of the world. And I'm sure their advances have gone up, right? Because they're bigger now. They were breaking with you back in the day, but they're full on touring the world now. So you're still keeping the prices low. And you had referenced earlier, like back in the day, like I remember going to Strawberries Music and buying a $20 Warped Tour ticket and seeing, 150 bands, getting free stickers, all this stuff. Like the value add is insane, but you're still doing it in 2026. Unbelievable.
I didn't need to come back and do another festival. Last thing I need to do in my life is put on another festival. I mean, I've done as many or more than anyone probably throughout history. When you take off the number of shows that I put up and down in the festival setting, what I needed to do was kind of come back and shake it up. Some people say fuck it up, but let's say shake it up. that there's a lot of wonderful festivals out there, but I felt that 90% of the people were starting to get priced out of festivals. And Warped was always the show for the people that couldn't afford to go back then to a Britney Spears or one of those other big shows. And maybe this is what they scraped together. It used to be roll up to the Warped Tour with 220s and you're in, and no fees on top. And it hasn't changed a whole lot when you look at the economics. It was funny, we do these Sunday Instagram lives, and I saw someone like, I used to only pay $20 for the Warped Tour. And I'm like, yeah, well, gas was 28 cents and a McDonald's burger was 39 cents. I mean, if you take where the economy is and where things have gone over time, we still deliver a value. And that value comes from finding those partners, those sponsors that we have. And we put the money back into the show to keep that ticket price. It's a simple model,
Hey, this is not an ad, me saying this. It's for 2 days. It's $170. I'm looking at the lineup for Washington, D.C. You could pay that for one of those bands to headline if you wanted a premium seat at like a headlining show. It is insane value. Like, we're all business heads. The economics don't make any sense. It's wild. It really is.
It never made sense, and that's why I was able to do it. You have to imagine many people were trying to figure out how to do something like Warped Tour. They were dead. And I was always waiting for someone to knock me off like the Warped Tour. But it was really, and it's hard to tell people because, in certain people's minds, somehow the Brinks truck was always leaving at 8 o'clock, and every night at Warped Tour full of all the money I made. We never really made money on Warped Tour. We only made money 2 years on tickets, to be 100% honest.
Wow.
We made money in 2005 when everything went crazy. My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, Avenged Sevenfold. I had Offspring. That lineup when TRL was blowing up and just, it was this moment in time. It was also the scariest summer I ever had because 780,000 people came and 280,000 of them had just got off the couch from watching TRL and thought they could go to a 9-hour festival in the sun. They all passed out. It was crazy. And then in 2018, the second to the last one, we did those one-off shows. It was the last cross-country touring festival. And I just said, I'm only bringing friends out. I'm only bringing people I can trust within the community. I'm not going to deal with any bullshit this summer. We're going to go have a great summer and say goodbye in a good, positive way. And everyone that moment in time where like, I better go because he's not coming back next year. And then we did those little one-off shows. So I think we wrapped it up very nicely. We had our second biggest summer ever in 2018. We did those one-off shows in Jersey and San Francisco in the Rock Hall. And I got in my van with my wife, and I just never forget driving out of San Francisco that morning after that last show and going, all right, I'm done, and moved on.
How did you go about picking the venues or the cities the last year and now adding, Mexico City and Montreal this year?
Well, that's with a partnership with like Insomniac. They're the largest EDM company in the world. They do EDC. They do events in DC. So when they came to me and said, I always liked DC for a Warp show. It was nice. We'd be out at Meriwether's Post, and it was an awesome venue. Of course, the venue operator, but it just wasn't big enough. But they had other festivals there. There was World Pride Festival last year and Project Glow, which is one of their EDM shows. So how did you economically make some of this work is that 1 foot of fence might cost you $2. But if you could leave that foot of fence up for 3 weeks, it's only still going to cost you $2 because you rent by the month. So that foot of fence cost me 60 cents. So everything looked at how to amortize. Now, no one expected Warp to be as big as it was. Where we lost a lot of that money was this giant transfer of changing the venue around. And it worked. It was great. Now, this year we'll go back to back or within a week of their Project Glow. Now we have time to design production and everything to maybe share a little bit more, not move as much around. And then Long Beach was, Southern California is where this all started. I started. There was East Coast, West Coast, but we blended it all together. And Long Beach, California is, if you're going to do a show in California in the summertime, it's 72 degrees, 73 degrees right on the water. For me, it was a little bit of roots. I started working in the clubs. One of the first places I worked was in Long Beach, California. And the politicians down there ran on throwing punk rock out of the city. Close the venues down. Punk rock, it was gnarly. And then all of a sudden, it's like we're doing the show and the mayor's going, I'm hosting the largest punk rock show in American history. And I'm turned to Joe Escalante, the Vandals, and Jacob from Sublime was standing there. There was a ceremony they were doing down there. And I go, dude, how the world has changed, thinking
no
that
kidding,
Long Beach was great. It's also the weather was beautiful. And then Orlando was backed up to EDC Orlando. I also was thinking, one, that I have some resources with this company I'm with now. They're worldwide company, so I can. And I said, I have an old great partner up in Montreal. They used to understand punk rock a lot up there. That was a great market for metal and punk rock. I don't think they're doing anything. I know they have a bunch of festivals. They have Oceaga and some other maybe we can blend into that footprint that they've done for that festival. So we're coming in, I think, as the last festival of 3 in that one. And then I've always wanted to go to Mexico City. We never got to take Warp down there. Ocesa, which is affiliated, they do EDC Mexico City. I was down there a couple of weeks ago. There's a young gentleman named Miguel down there who's a super Warp fan. Like, you got to have a person in the market that gets what you do. Came to every show. I met him, and he said, I said, I trust that you're going to be a good ambassador of my brand. And he's going, that show's going great. We did a big event at the House of Vans recently. There was 1,300 tickets and 30,000 kids signed up for a party, inviting skate parks out, inviting artists out. And I think, you need people that want to be good ambassadors to your brand in that market.
For day of these gigs, are you able to enjoy it, or is it work?
I'm always working, but compared to being on tour the way I used to be, absolutely. I mean, they know how to run a festival. These companies do the biggest in the world. I brought in people that were front-facing, that were Warp familiar faces, stage managers, back-of-house people. So there was a lot of the old school Warp people, and their companies absorbing Warp Tour people on their other projects because they realized how hard they work and the good attitudes they had. So there was enough people that they know who I am. And I was actually I was on a text, of course, but I didn't even have to carry a radio. So I was able to ride my bike around while we're building and just give advice and talk to people. But almost like I worked so hard leading up to the shows, working way harder leading up to the shows. But when I got there, there's so many good people know what they're doing. And then I got to walk out to the front gates. We got to bring everyone in early because there were so many people there early. They want to see the band. I got to, in Orlando, climb up on a ladder and cut the rope, and the schedule opened up. It was just, you got goosebumps again. And that's what I had lost. doing this. And just how tuned in the crowd was. I mean, we had doors were at 11 o'clock in San Diego, and we had 45,000 people in the doors at 11 o'clock.
Wow.
Insane.
And we did the big drop of the reveal of the schedule. And then literally the Battle of the Bands band had to start like almost immediately because of timing. And 20,000 people just turned and ran to the stage.
Wow.
So we gave them a memory that whether that band goes anywhere else in life, they're going to have a great video to show their kids of the time that they played for 20,000 people when they're in the dad band, when their kids in 6th grade and they're playing in the dad band somewhere. You know, they're going to be able to bring it out.
Yeah.
We played at the Warped Tour. That was, you know, you create memories and you never know. But I was really thinking, like, I'm going, I hope those bands go on and great, but you never know. There's a lot of bands. But man, that band, we shot them in high def. They were on the video. They got a great cut of their show. They're going to be able to show their kids. They're going to be heroes for life. You know, when dad's not that cool, they'll just whip that out and say, this was me at this thing called the Warped Tour.
Yeah, I was cool once.
Yeah.
So it makes sense, like economically wise, you're saying like the touring thing, like that's a young gun type of thing for both the bands and for the, you know, the production staff alone, because it's just you're on the road nonstop. So it's almost like a less is more type model, because Lollapalooza, like you said, you're contemporary with Perry Farrell, like same thing, just Lollapalooza in Chile, Chicago. I think there's one in Germany now. Just a few good ones, right? Satellite festivals.
Yeah. So starting a brand is very hard in the festival business. You know, they used to say, oh, you'll lose money the first year. You might lose a little the second year. You break even in the third year. The economics of this business are so deep, you can dig yourself into a super big hole. And most people don't have that kind of hole to live for 3 years in. But you can take a name like Lollapalooza or Rolling Loud or EDC or Warped Tour, and we do have some brand recognition. So because kids are watching YouTube and they're watching videos. So when we put up Warped Tour in Mexico City, in Montreal, we said, just go on sale and see if we sell some tickets on the name. Both promoters said, no way in our market is anyone buying a ticket without the band. And they said, there's never going to happen. You'll sell 100 tickets. In Montreal, we sold about 10,000. And in Mexico City, about 13,000. Wow. So that gives you that foot up. Now, we still have a long way to go to break even, but having that foot up, and you now have 13,000 people talking about it in that community, telling their friends about it. That's how you break. That's why these brands now can expand internationally. Going in and starting a brand from scratch, you know, whatever the Pen Fest, you know, that name is going to take you, and you can dig yourself in an extremely big hole. And I mean, this business has never been for the faint of heart. Now it's like it's a whole nother level. Like I could have never come back and done this on my own again, to be honest. Having this partner, some people go, "You did it on your own all this time." I go, yeah, I'm older. I don't want to go in. I don't have the chance to go in a big giant hole and then work my way out of it at my age. You get a little more conservative.
Well, and you did all the work to get the brand recognition, right? I mean, it's been around for 30-ish years, as the the branding says, and you had to grind it out and go to all those cities, and now you can put something on sale and not have a single band announced and people be like, I want to go to that because I know it's going to be a good time. And that's crazy.
And now this lineup's out, and I think people are really the first few. It's starting to make real sense when you look at those ad maps, and there's still some blank spots in there, and we'll be actually filling in some of those blank spots till May, like in Orlando, just because of radius clauses. But when you start looking at it as a whole, if you're a fan of this kind of music, it's a pretty big day, big 2 days.
Well, we were looking at it the other night, and we went through like, oh, we've had, 5 or 6 of these bands on. I would go see these 2 bands for that price. I'd go see these 2 bands for that price easily, and then there's so many more. So yeah, the value alone is. We
just announced Rise Against. I mean, that's a big band. We just threw like in the middle of there's Rise Against playing DC. That's cool.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Well, I remember going back in the day. This was before smartphones, so I would bring a pad of paper. I'd bring some paper, and I'd go to the big inflatable display of the bands, and then you'd map out your itinerary. And what is there now? Like, do you put the set times ahead of time and all that?
Oh, okay, we announced the day of the show.
Oh, I love that.
That's awesome.
No, we did
love it.
A lot of people were like, it's not going to work. Things have changed.
No,
and
I love that.
And I go, you know what? a lot of festivals will tell you exactly what to do. They tell you where to turn. I want people to come and think and be part of it and just, you know, and it was. Now, some people don't like it. There's great festivals. You got Aftershock. You got there are huge festivals all around. Those will tell you exactly what's going on, and you can go. And a lot of people want to be told what's exactly going on. But I've always felt like you have to challenge people, and I think that creates the unique story of Warped Tour. Because maybe you three come, Anthony, Tony, Nate come, and they won't hang out all weekend together. You're gonna have the same experience. But are the people right next to you that went to a whole different world of pathways and we did a thing with Borderland the game where it was a rage room and there's Ice-T in there smashing things. Now, who saw that? We didn't advertise it.
That's awesome.
We just went in there, and so that those few hundred people that saw that, they had their own experience and moment that no one had because we didn't market to anyone saying you need to be here at this stage or this is going to happen at this time.
Well, it gets you to go out again because you're going to have maybe a completely different time the next time you go.
Sure.
And then fun people embraced it. Tony Hawk jumping up and singing Superman with Goldfinger and then grabbing his board and jumping in on the ramp, dropping in. Pretty epic moment for the people that caught it. And
Absolutely.
Everyone was talking backstage. Did you see Tony drop? What? Tony dropped in? No one told me. Well, we didn't tell anyone. We didn't even know. He took that moment and created his own moment.
I'm telling you, a lot of my favorite music memories are from the Warped Tour. It's bands being at their own merch table, all the samplers. A lot of labels would make their summer sampler to be distributed, even if they didn't have any bands on the Warped Tour. I can't tell you how many bands I learned about from samplers that I got at the Warped Tour.
We're encouraging the labels to come out again. I think the labels are, it was interesting when we had a few come out, of course, the Fearless and some of the people Hopeless that I know, and but now we're getting calls from more labels like, hey, and I'm like, of course, yeah, come set up. There's some paperwork you got to fill out. We're not going to charge you. We'll treat you like a band. It's 10% on our system. Pay us what you want. That's how you invest back into a scene to grow a scene. We have big sponsors that write checks to help make that show go. I'm reaching out now to new nonprofits. I'm just sending a cold email if I find a little indie label with a few bands and say, hey, this is how we used to do on Warp. You want to be part of it? That's being an ambassador. So I've kind of turned into this ambassador to the brand again. I want to take that role more. I micromanaged loading docks and load-in times and fire lanes the first year because that's who I am. But now I want to step back and be the ambassador to the brand. We're working on a video game right now. It'll be launched this summer where it's going to be all young Warped Tour bands in the game. There's going to be a whole segment of the game that has skating and it's called My Pet Hooligan. And there's some AI components to it. That's where I want to take the brand and help these bands because it's tough on young bands. The labels don't have the big budgets to market them. They're out there fighting away. And, we did a thing. There was a band got arrested on top of a truck outside in front of the Long Beach show.
Oh,
we booked them and we released their video this week of them playing. That's what Warp's about, not necessarily how many followers you have to have. We have to be smart with our booking. We have to make sure that we build a package. But you know what? There's those moments where that band, I think they're a good band. They were a pretty good band. And now they're like, oh my God, they're so excited. And now we have to bring fun back into it because everything is such work. We all work so hard now.
Silly Goose, right? Silly Goose was the band.
No. God, I'll
get arrested too outside of a festival. Same idea.
Silly Goose is great. We had them on a couple shows last year. They're coming. We don't have a problem bringing bands back now, year after a few years in a row. I have 2 years so far because I think that's how we used to do it with Paramore and Day to Remember and those bands and Pierce the Veil. You'd bring them back 2-3 years in a row. And then all of a sudden you were investing in their career and then they were there for you when they could be helping you sell tickets.
Well, we know of bands that we've chatted with that were not on the tour, but would follow the tour and hand out their CDs. Well, people
and now
were
they're
in line.
now they're doing the Orlando.
And now they're on the tour.
Yeah, that's
yeah.
I think if you go back through history, Mayday Parade used to do that in the parking lots, sell stuff in the parking lots to get from city to city. The Maine, who played this year, went out and did it again this year. They walked the lines with their signs. They made the signs and walked, and we're selling CDs to kids for $5. A lot of people were telling me that, you go to festivals and that's become part of your economic model. That's business. But a lot of people told me we went back to Warp because it was family.
Right on.
And creating those backstage moments, to have Rise Against do an acoustic show backstage for a bunch of charity kids that we brought back, but for all the families and band members getting to hang out and watch Tim sing. And then, the next day you have Tyson Ritter doing a backstage show. That's all. And then, of course, I wanted the Agro Lights to be up to the barbecue because they used to be one of our favorite barbecue bands. And
Nice.
that Saturday night in Long Beach, where we had 5,000 guests at that show, and there was a few thousand people backstage, a couple thousand people still hanging around, and the Agro Lights just playing, everyone dancing in the back with their kids, their grandkids. We had the barbecue going. That's what it is. It's work. We work really hard, but then we also know how to create those moments. And that's what people go, what do you remember about all those years? And I go, it was those moments, not necessarily during the show, but the ones afterwards, those days off where we'd get houseboats or go whitewater rafting or just park at a lake and buy a bunch of inner tubes and let them all be kids again. Because I was touring with people that were children, basically, and you gave them an inner tube and threw them in a lake. Man, they were as happy as anyone.
And that must be wild. You got bands like Blink-182, they're just playing the side stage, and now they're one of the biggest punk bands of all time. Like
they rode in my bus. They couldn't afford to be on the road. They rode on my bus. Unfortunately, it's hard. I saw them in their underwear before. You don't want that visual.
Yeah.
Oh, I've seen it on the music videos.
Yeah. Oh, they're naked in the music videos.
Yeah.
So Kevin, I don't know if you've talked about this. How did Vans come into play? Because the first iteration in '95, it was Warped Tour, and then the next year was Vans, right?
Yeah, I was broke, after that first year. Every festival producer kind of broke, working back in the clubs every night of the week just to pay the bills for our family. And I started to put in my mind that you're going to need to get some subsidies to make this work. The original partnership, it never happened and never got close, and I wish I had it, was my wife was a graphic designer and artist. She's a scenic artist. So she actually drew a skateboard that said Calvin Klein Warped Tour on it. Because an ex-partner is Calvin Klein. I wish I had that because I'd use it as branding mistake one. Like I would not be talking to you about that because it was pretty, it was a testy with the punk community that I was getting money from brands to go out. And then I guess said, I'm getting money from brands to bring this music to other people. That's so important. But then getting a call from Vans, but I thought they wanted to talk about the festival, and it was really they wanted to talk to me about amateur skating and maybe helping them with amateur skating. And I had nothing to lose at that point. I just threw it out there. People won't see amateur skating unless you're part of my successful music festival. And then
right on.
We made that deal in about 15 minutes, the premise of it. They gave me enough money to make it that second year when no one wanted to pay us anything. The promoters didn't want to pay it. It was a scramble to make it from city to city. I had cool bands like NoFX and Pennywise that were kind of legitimizing in that world even more, even though I worked in that world. And that helped me get to year 3. And years 3, when we kind of finally started to turn that corner to be able to not go to the clubs every night and work after the tour.
Well, I'm 40 and still wear a Vans hat.
30 years with the same sponsor, essentially, right? Close to 30 years. That's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, we worked 30, the 5 years we didn't, but there was 30 years of actually shows. Steve Van Doren's awesome. He's been a huge supporter of mine, and it's been great.
So the landscape certainly has changed. I mean, we kind of spoke to this a little before, but I'm not going to say it by name, but there's a lot of big festivals out there, and I can't wrap my head around the economics until I look at the ticket price, and I'm like, okay, well, that kind of tracks. So I don't know, like how do you make it work? I know you've kind of alluded to it a little bit, but is it the experience? Is it the partnership? Is it the relationships? Like, what's the secret sauce?
A little bit of all.
Yeah.
The combination, a little bit of all. We've got some staging companies that I'm sure they're fair with everyone, but they're going to look kindly to me because I gave them their first gig before they became big staging companies. Yep. You have your book rate, and then you have your preferred customer rate. I've always paid everything I've ever done. I paid my bills. Every festival never said, "Oh, the tour didn't do well. We can't pay you." Everyone was paid, which is sadly a rarity sometimes in 45 years of business. So people will throw in a little to help make it work. They helped make everyone took a little bit. That last $1,000 you might be negotiating with the band wasn't they understood that we couldn't pay more. There's a negotiation with everything, and you find a happy median. It was everyone has to give a little to make Warped Tour work.
That's awesome, and it's amazing that it's back again. And maybe next year, if you expand a little more, you throw in the Boston area so we can come down and say hi.
Trust me, I would love to do. I would love to do Boston. You have to call the Gillette family and get them to work with us on a better deal for the facility. It's also the facilities have to be able to work with us. And unfortunately, so many places have turned into Amazon warehouses. Believe it or not, that we used to be able to find spaces. I think they used to follow around the big festival, all the festival people, and go, "Oh, that's a great farm. Let's buy that up and put a 900,000 square foot whatever monstrosity there," because it's hard to find locations. I would love to come back and do. You can't do it at Suffolk Downs because of the gambling. There's just all these different rules. There's very few places up in your neck of the woods because Warped was a great market. Boston, that whole Northeast. Trust me, I would love to be up there. Now we had to go to Montreal, which is just a few-hour drive. You know?
It's only like 5-ish, depending on how fast you're going.
The Canadian kids still love American kids. Now our countries might having issues, but the people aren't having issues. It's our leaders are having issues. But man, they want you all to come up, enjoy. They make great poutine up there. If you haven't had any, they'll give you great places to get some nice food. I'm really looking forward to that location in Montreal. Is a beautiful location.
I'll co-sign that, Kevin. I went to it's at the same location, Park Jean Drapeau, the same place. Yeah. I went in 01, and then we took a road trip in 04 up there. Hit the casinos, hit all that. I don't do that anymore, but go up there for the for the Warped Tour.
Plenty to do, right? Yeah,
it's a beautiful place. That city across the river and stuff. So it's going to be. We'll see where it goes. I mean, the nice thing is I have partners. There's no pressure. They just do what you want to do, Kevin. That's rare. They're just they're the ones that are helping me keep that ticket price down too. They want to keep it down as long as we possibly can.
So, and I'm sure there have been times over the course of the 30-ish years that you've been surprised that it's still going, or do I really want to keep doing this? Because there have been breaks. Do you want to keep doing this after 2026? Is this something that you've reinvigorated for now?
I would say I'd say if the fans come out and we can, you wouldn't want, it is a business. You wouldn't want to, go into huge debt again to get it done. But it looks like as long as we can kind of, make it work, not get greedy, just keep it. We will never get greedy. I can tell you that. That's not who we are. But just make it all kind of work and everyone keeps firing on this. I would think that we're going to be potentially around for a few years. I'm excited. Maybe, I bet they'd love punk rock and skateboarding in India, maybe,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's the story of my life. I should just get on a plane and go there and check it out. But I have to bring 40 bands everywhere I go.
Yeah, exactly.
The whole production and stuff. It's been first time everywhere I've ever gone for the first time. Europe, South America, Japan. Always I'm Australia, always seem to bring a few hundred people, friends of mine, to come with me, and I work my ass off. But it's been a good run, and I can't complain. No one would listen anyhow, so why bother?
Well, hopefully they'll listen to this. So
no, I hope so. It's always nice to see you guys.
Kevin, one last question here. We'll post all the lineups up to the point when we release this. But who were you really stoked on that came through for this? You mentioned Rise Against.
I was, right. Those are the bands, but I was interesting that we had some bands like Third Eye Blind.
Oh, fuck yes. We talked about them earlier tonight.
Yeah, never played Warped Tour. That's cool. Hoobastank.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I know. I'm looking at the DC lineup, and they're both on it. And you got Suicide Silence, early November. You got Yellow Card. I mean, it's perfect for us because we're all over the map.
Yeah, it's all over the map. You go down and then you go look at some of those other bands that are just starting to pop off. There's so many bands popping off. The nice thing is it's punk rock. It's become multiracial now. There's so many females playing this music. It's a great time for this music. They just need the outlet and the support for these new bands. There's so much good music out there right now. It's a different time of play. I'm like, wow, if you had all these bands in 1991, when this music would have ruled the world at that point. it ruled our little world, but it would have ruled the world in such a big way.
I think you just nailed it on the head in terms of the talent, because I think some of these bands are probably going on YouTube watching, like, Warped Tour 98 and 97 and 99. Like, fuck, man, I wish this festival existed for our band to have that platform. But Warped Tour, you call it, a few years ago, like, didn't exist, or, it went on hiatus, as you said. Therefore, there's no other festival that can kind of cater to what we want to do, unless we're super lucky and get like a small support on, some of those major festivals you had mentioned, but still don't really feel authentic, if that makes sense. Whereas Warped Tour is kind of equal opportunity in pretty much all genres. I mean, you had Dr. Dre and Eminem to no effects, so.
I know they're watching those YouTube videos because at the Warped Tour, I hadn't met a lot of them. And they were all looking at me strange. Like, he kind of looks like the guy that used to run Warped Tour, but he's like an old man now.
Nice.
I saw him in those videos. Like, he's just old. He looks like my grandpa up there. Is that him still? Like, no, I got to meet a lot of those young bands, and it was nice. But they saw those videos when I could actually run around the festival site with a shirt off and ride my bike with my lawn. Now it's like, I got my support shoes and no 2 layers of shirts on. So.
Yeah. You're one of the OGs. What is it? You, David Wimmer, and maybe one other person that's running the festival? Danny. Sorry, Danny Wimmer.
Danny Wimmer still running his things, and he's got some big lineups this year. He's got the big shows coming up. The guys that when we were young, we talked a lot with them. Sean Akavon and those guys, and they're taking a little hiatus, and everyone's gonna see where it goes. I think we got 6 New Worlds back this year, doing a few shows. But I don't really worry about it. I don't pay attention to a lot. I've always told people, you have to stay focused on what you're doing. If you stay focused, and I keep telling my people, sometimes they drift off. Over this people, I go, just stay focused. Stay on our point. We have to stay on our mission, and whether we'll know if it works or not. It might not work, but we can't react to what anyone else is doing.
What's the rationale between no advertised headliners?
Hard to get a band to close Warped Tour.
Yeah.
Because, man, you got to be, I had Tyson Ritter came and visited me over at school the other day with Megan, his manager, and just to talk to my students about their comeback and the backyard parties and everything. But I go, yeah, man, Tyson, do you remember when I just called you guys and we're like, I'm going to put you last? He goes, you never told me we were playing last. I go,
shit, yeah.
I go, oh, wait, that's right, I didn't, because you would have gotten too nervous. I just told him you would play in the dark. You would play in the dark so you could do a full show, because I wanted to bookend all that hard work they did, those backyard parties. And I wanted to show the world how big a band All American Rejects is. So we knew we were live streaming. And if you play second to last, you don't know if everyone's waiting for the last band. If you play last, you are holding the crowd. It's your job to hold that crowd. And when they had 40, 50,000 people in front of them in Long Beach, that was the kind of bookend to all that hard work they did. And they closed that thing, and not a person left in the whole venue. A few people did. There was 80,000 people there that day, but I bet at least 50,000 saw them play that day. There were still other stages going,
and that's a massive number. That's a massive number. Yeah.
So I'm challenging the band sometimes. I put them in those spots. I want to put them in spots and pressure cook them, see if they can hold it and do it. There's a few this year. I'm already starting to think where people will fall and where it'll go. And I'm like, I want to challenge some people. I used to challenge people back in the day. Challenge Katy Perry and put her on right after Bring Me the Horizon, or right before Pierce the Veil. But you know what? It made her a good live act. You learn how to.
I'm looking at the DC lineup. You got Coheed, Jimmy Eat World, Kill Switch, Newfound Glory, Thrice, Story So Far, Taking Back Sunday, Story of the Year. I mean, Rise Against. Any one of those bands could close it, and that's kind of the fun of like who's going to shut this down. Yellow Card. I mean,
and it's great now because
used.
I mean, they're solid, and there's so many good bands. But of course, when are we going to get the good band? I love the comments. When are we going to get the good bands?
What?
Yeah.
We get a lot of like emojis, crying emoji. You don't know if they're crying for happiness, crying for sadness, crying for this city's been left out in the field. I don't. You're all going to end up with somewhere between 80 and 150 bands on the weekend.
Yeah, and some great bands on there. So many great bands.
And only reason you don't have as many stages is the location and the size of the spaces. So some locations will have 5 stages up in Montreal, and we'll have 8 in Long Beach and Orlando. You wish you could bring them all. I wish I could bring like 1,000 bands. and then you'll get to see 15 of them a day, and then
Yeah.
they were all there. So, collect a lot of canned food last year. I don't know. It feels good. It's just a lot of work, Sitting here talking to you late at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've never started my day up at like 6:30 in the morning, but it's always nice. And I feel I learned this early on tour with Blink when they were on my tour bus. I was the guy who wouldn't talk. I was more the guy that loaded your gear or threw you off stage. But I started something and I realized that I was going to be the only person that could talk passionately about my brand. I asked Blink 182 to ride on my bus. You got to talk about Warped Tour. You got to bring it up. And what do they want to talk about? They want to talk about what they were passionate about, their record, coming out, Dude Ranch. They wanted to talk about, which rightfully so. And then I realized that I really believe, hey, it's not a perfect world. We've had our issues. There's been things happen, but I have to make decisions, right or wrong. I have to make them in real time. There was no books written on any of this. There was no history to any of this. There was no social media etiquette books to read, all these things. We were figuring it out in real time. And at the end of this, I'm sure a lot of people, there's some people that will not like me, but in the end, just stack up next to me and see how many things I've tried in my life. And that's what I want people to do. I want people to go out and try things. Failure is okay. And we have to get back to the point we only move forward if we're willing to fail.
Yeah. Well, I think the authenticity is there, right? Blink mentions Warped Tour in one of their biggest songs, The Rock Show. Like you said, the price point is still reasonable even today. I know we were talking about $20 tickets back in the day, but again, that's time and place. That was the year 2000, 99, 98. Now we're looking at 159 in 2026. That's 3 bands on this bill would be that price. One band, maybe, like Twan said, in terms of a premium ticket. Yeah. And just the fact you were talking about like the headliner thing. Like I forgot that in 2000 Green Day played and like 20 bands played after them. Like there's no traditional logical sense. The punk rock ethos of the festival itself is very much intact, and we think that's super rad.
Well, it's also why we broke bands, because if you were playing opening, that's what Henry Rollins used to open every day on Lollapalooza, and I'd have to watch him singing to empty seats. And Henry Rollins was the most intense, like as intense as anyone. And I'd watch him and I go, wouldn't it be cool if he got to open for Jane's Addiction between Susie? He would have changed his trajectory as an artist. So that's what we did. We changed that trajectory. We were able to mix it up every day, challenge the bands to become better live bands, challenge the fans to come early and check everyone out because you didn't want to miss your favorite band. I challenged my crew because we had to be ready to open doors on time, because the last thing I ever wanted anyone to do was miss their favorite band, because who would hear about it? You put yourself out there. I was the person that kept you from watching that band, And there's people that probably still hold a vendetta against me because they missed the Used in 2002 at Asbury Park because the venue, we couldn't get them in quick enough, But
Brockton Fairgrounds.
Yeah, Brockton Fairgrounds. That was always a good one too.
Yeah,
that's where we had Twisted play. Do you remember?
I didn't see them there. I saw Bert jump off the stage, off the speaker there.
Brockton Fairgrounds, but Dropkick Murphys were on that show.
It's a great show.
Brockton. But right before them, a band called Twisted wanted to play on that show. And I know of them. Yeah. I was not like, I'm like, this isn't Warped Tour. But you know what? John Peters wanted me to put them on. Mass concerts. I trust him. I put them on, but I kind of screwed with them at that point. And I feel bad because they were such nice guys. They toured on Warped Tour later. I said, okay, you want to come play Warped Tour? You get in the pressure cooker. You got to play right before the Dropkick Murphys in Boston.
Oh, nice.
Good luck.
And the crowd, of course, was throwing stuff at him and this. And then one of the band members was dumb, or friends was dumb enough to jump down and fight the Dropkick crowd in the
yeah, smart. Yeah.
That guy came out with no clothes on. Like he ran and jumped over a fence. I felt bad. I put him back on the whole Warped Tour because it always stuck in my mind. What a shitty thing to do. Where was I? Like, why did I do that? Why did I do that? And I put them on the whole Warped Tour one summer, and they were lovely people to be on, and they did a great job. Yeah, I don't know. I just still that kind of, I just didn't understand them. But when you met them as people, they were just doing their thing, and they were really lovely to tour with. I made it up to them because they had a great time.
Nice.
Well, it speaks to the range, right? You get Big Ass Truck and you get Third Eye Blind. I mean, that's the only festival you're going to get both of those.
Big Ass Truck, definitely. They played our free show down in Long Beach a couple weeks ago. Hardcore's back, Yes. People are pissed off and have a lot of energy they got to get off right now.
Yes, they do.
Love it.
I think when you look at it, I think we have Snapcase on the show in there somewhere.
We just had Daryl on.
Yeah. I mean, that's awesome. Big Wig, Snapcase, they come back and hang out and play Warped Tour,
That's right. They were on back in the day.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Kevin, this was awesome. It was great catching up with you again. Really
Absolutely.
excited for this summer's Warped Tour stuff and beyond, hopefully.
Yeah, well, I hope to see you out there. We've inviting all the podcasts to come out and broadcast or record at the show because you've got everyone in one place. Just talk to Allie, and we're going to get it all set up for people. All right?
Awesome.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Stay safe, you guys.
You too.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks,
Take
Kevin.
it easy. Thank you for listening to Patio Slave. We are at Patio Slave on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, all of the places that you can find us on social media. Facebook, Patio Slave Podcast. YouTube, Patio Slave Podcast there. Email us at patioslavepodcast@gmail.com. And hey, if you want to become a supporter, click on the link at the bottom of the episode and give us $1, give us $5. It keeps the lights on, keeps us going. We really appreciate that stuff. Thank you.